It's a beautiful morning here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. You're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. I am Ayuba Ilya, of course, not alone.
Good morning, Ayuba, and good morning, Nigerians. Thank you for tuning in to Daybreak this morning. My name is Stella Iyaji.
Yes, quite a lot lined up for you. A lot really going on. With the whole
Ayuba,
issue of
the most important thing right now, the old 500, the old 1,000 remain legal tender, according to the CBN, in consonance with the ruling of the Supreme Court.
This time around, no contradiction.
Yeah.
Initially, I saw different statements. First, it was from the governor of Anambra State, and I was wondering what exactly is going on. Should we be hearing from this, to the former CBN governor, who is now a governor in Anambra State, and then later we now saw the statement from the CBN, which laid to rest all the ambiguity and all the uncertainty around the whole issue of the Naira crunch.
However, I mean, after the notice or the announcement by the CBN, by the former governor of the CBN and the governor of Anambra State now, a lot of people expected that the CBN would speak a lot earlier. Not late in the evening as it did shortly after the statement by the presidential spokesman, Garba.
Well, it appears as though the statement by the presidency prompted some things to, to setting into motion. And
I was counting it. It's 11 days since the Supreme Court ruling, actually.
11 good
11 good days.
And all along, Nigerians have been struggling with this whole issue of Naira crunch in a confused state, as a matter of fact.
In fact, I saw a story where a governor of a particular state had to go to raise awareness yesterday with some bank officials to tell the people that you can actually accept and use the old Naira notes. All of that was because of the silence on the part of the CBN.
Yes, and the public, actually, members of the public, I've heard a lot of people say, well, yes, the Supreme Court has said we can accept these old Naira notes, but we haven't heard from the president. We haven't heard from the CBN. So we cannot be accepting the money. So even though we had that Supreme Court judgment, a lot of Nigerians were skeptical.
And even banks said that they were not getting allocations from the CBN either.
Yeah, so hopefully that changed now.
I hope so.
Because it may not be a given that all these statements have come out, and it will translate into having the cash.
I'm hoping that by this afternoon we'll start seeing something different. Hopefully. At least at the banks and then the queues at the ATMs. I'm hoping that something
changes. Nigerians have suffered enough. It's time to put an end to this. Well, let's take a look at the headlines. Just like we started off saying, CBN finally obeys Supreme Court order, approves use of old 500 1,000 Naira notes.
Inspection, we have nothing to hide, INEC chairman tells Peter Obi's lawyers.
Presidential poll, Wike worked against me in Rivers, says Obi.
Now let's take a look at the details. The Central Bank of Nigeria has approved the circulation of old 500 Naira and 1,000 Naira notes. The Apex Bank confirmed this in a statement issued on Monday night. In the statement issued by Issa Abdulmumin, CBN spokesperson, the Apex Bank directed commercial banks to start issuing and accepting old notes. Governor Chukwuma Charles Soludo of Anambra State had earlier announced that the CBN had complied with the Supreme Court order. Later on Monday night, the presidency issued a statement saying the CBN did not need President Muhammadu Buhari's directives before complying with the Supreme Court ruling, which extended the validity of the old notes to December 31st.
Now, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, has assured the Labour Party legal team of the Commission's readiness to provide all documents the party requested to prosecute its case at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. Yakubu gave the assurance when he received the 60 lawyers legal team of the LP presidential candidate, Peter Obi, led by Dr. Levi Uzoku on Monday in Abuja. He also told the guest that the commission will also meet with its resident electoral commissioners to work out modalities for the inspection of materials in the state. According to him, there were two categories of documents that are in possession of the headquarters of INEC, and that these documents will be made available to them. The INEC boss also said that the other document is accreditation data from the back end, and that this will also be made available to them.
The presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the February 25th elections, Peter Obi, has accused the governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, of working against him during the polls. Obi, who on Monday also alleged foul play in the presidential election results in Rivers, claimed that he won in the state. Obi said people voted for him without considering ethnicity, but based on his pedigree, adding that he even got more votes from Lagos indigents than those referred to as visitors. In Rivers, Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress won with 231,591 votes, while the Labour Party got 175,071 votes.
All right, now to some of the packages lined up for you today. The leadership of the All Progressives Congress has met with senators and members of the House of Representatives elected on the party platform to begin consultations and negotiations ahead of the selection of principal officers in the 10th National Assembly. Despite the fact that the meetings like this are often arranged to zone offices in the emerging National Assembly, the leadership of the party will have Nigerians believe that the issue was not discussed. A glaring absentee at the meeting was President-elect Bola Tinubu, who was represented by the Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima. Now, Kehinde Amodu reports on this.
History is a great teacher. The rancorous emergence of the leadership of the 8th National Assembly is etched starkly in the minds of members of the All Progressive Congress, and so the party is starting early to set parameters ahead of the inauguration of the 10th National Assembly in June. APC lawmakers-elect arrive at the banquet hall of the presidential villa for a meeting. It is the first interface of the elected APC lawmakers with the party leadership since their victory on the ballot and after receiving their certificates of return.
It is also my hope and prayer that the 10th Senate and indeed the 10th National Assembly as a whole will jealously guard and protect the constitutional provision of separation of powers.
This is the first time in the history of our democracy that we're going to be having representation of the floor through this high number of political parties. But the good thing about it is it will foster better and greater negotiation.
As the APC begins to fine-tune the process of electing principal officers that will steer the affairs of the parliament, all things are being kept under wraps, and the party is downplaying the politics of zoning, which will determine who gets what in the emerging National Assembly.
If APC decides to zone just to give a balance and to give every segment of the country a sense of belonging, it's good. Some other party might decide not to and say winner takes all. For us, the most important thing is having Nigeria as a single entity.
Yes, it's well on their head. We have another election coming up this weekend, and we need to make sure that everybody goes back home. Roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty.
It's a family affair. This is not the right time to talk about zoning. All we need now is to consolidate on our victory.
Members of the National Assembly should produce their leadership based on who they think is the best, and also considering the issues at stake. Putting in place for our head justice, fairness, equity.
We don't want to be preemptive. I know first and foremost is to welcome ourselves and congratulate ourselves on the resounding victory recorded on February 25. And going forward will be what are the issues regarding the leadership of the National Assembly.
While it is highly unlikely that zoning was not discussed, the official line being told is that the topmost priority for now is winning the second leg of the general elections. From State House Abuja, Kehinde Amodu, Trust TV News.
Thank you, Kehinde, for that report. The Court of Appeal in Abuja has reserved judgment in an appeal filed by Senator Ademola Adeleke of the People's Democratic Party, challenging the judgment of an election petition tribunal which nullified his victory in the Osun governorship election. A three-member panel led by Justice Muhammad Shuaibu, after taking arguments from all parties in the suit, said the judgment would be delivered at a later date. Senator Adeleke had won the said election held on July 16, 2022, but the result was nullified on grounds of overvoting. Let's take the report.
Abuja Division is filled with lawyers and supporters of Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke and his predecessor Daybreak Oyetola, who are here to witness proceedings in the appeal filed by Adeleke, challenging the judgment of Election Petition Tribunal in Osun State, which nullified his election as governor of the state. At the resumed hearing, counsel to Adeleke tells the court that a member of the panel, who is also a chief magistrate, did not air her opinion during the judgment delivery, but only appended her signature. Counsel to Oyetola, however, argues that signing of the judgment and not making any comment afterwards does not make the judgment invalid. In his defense, however, Onyechi Ikpeazu held that results stored in the back-end server are inconsistent and not reliable, as they can be affected by internet connectivity and battery life of the beavers used to upload the results. On the cross-appeal filed by Oyetola challenging the documents of Adeleke, the court held that it has been addressed in a previous judgment as such was an anomaly.
In this respect, on the issue of the alleged forgery of a testimonial, which saw Osun State appearing on a testimonial for a person who had been educated before the creation of Osun State, the Court of Appeal held in that case that it was a simple error, that he ought to have gone back to rectify the anomaly, but not having done that, that it wasn't an issue of forgery.
That everything has gone well for both sides. All the appeals, including the cross appeals, have been heard, and we're all in court when the court adjourned the matter to a date to be communicated to all of us. Simply, for judgment.
INEC on its part insists that there was no overvoting during the Osun election.
Just as with the presidential election, you will agree that all the results have not also been transmitted. So if you get a result, a CTC today, and tomorrow another person applies, he may get a different data because the data will go is going in bits. So you cannot, because of Section 62 of the Electoral Act that authorizes INEC to update the data from time to time.
The court also reserved judgment in the PDP and INEC appeals. INEC had declared Adeleke winner of the Osun governorship election, but in a split decision of 2-1, the Election Petition Tribunal invalidated the election and declared Oyetola as winner. Martia Umar, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right, now goods could not be moved without the energy and labor of porters at northern grain markets. They help merchants convey their goods to various destinations to put food on the table. Trust TV's Ibrahim Ismail meets a 66-year-old leader of the grain porters in Bajoga, known as Sarkin Dakum Bajoga in Gombe State, on his successes and struggles.
The 66-year-old Abubakar Sarkin Dakum Bajoga has been conveying bags of grains for over 45 years. Abubakar's outstanding performance and success as a laborer earned him the title of Sarkin Dakum Bajoga, Funakai local government area of Gombe State. In addition, he built house and sponsored his children's education from the proceeds.
I achieved a lot. I have provided for my family and children from the proceeds as a laborer. I am successful. In those days, we were paid between 2 naira 1 kobo to convey a bag of grain, to a time when we received 80 naira per bag.
Naira 70, 80 kenan ko? To yanzu haka ake yi. Kowane buhu daya.
The 66-year-old said hundreds of youth also make fortunes from the job, calling on governments to support them.
A kullum a hukumance talaka ana cewa za a yi masa ba a masa ba.
Empty promises are being made to the poor, but there is no light at the end of the tunnel. We never receive any assistance as laborers.
Tun da muka shiga ba a taɓa zuwa a ce hukuma ga wannan abu ta ɗauka ta taimakawa talaka ba a cikin leburori.
We only support ourselves. At times, we contribute money to support a member who is in need, but we hope the support will come one day.
Akwai kura biyu ko uku mu bashi bai ya taimakawa gidansa.
Having worked for 45 years, the Sarkin Dako has retired from the job, but he still mentors young members of the Ndako group at the Bajoga Grain Market. From Gombe, Ibrahim Ismail reporting for Trust TV.
Thank you, Ibrahim Ismail, for that report. The Naira crisis has taken a new dimension in Benue State, with customers now sleeping on queues to make withdrawals from their banks. Our reporter, Jimmy Azande, who is monitoring the situation, gives us an update from Makurdi.
In the early hours of Monday, some customers were notified by their banks that there is no cash in their vaults for withdrawal. In some of the banks, there was chaos at the gate once the bankers announced that they could only pay 3,000 Naira only per customer. While some were okay with the bank's decision, it became an issue to get into the banking hall.
The experience here is not a pleasant one. I've been here since to 6 a.m. Actually, the workers tried their best. We were giving numbers so that people would go in queues according to the number. But some young men came and they refused to follow the protocol, and so they get the place chunked up. Nobody's going in, nobody's coming out.
Other customers said they had complaints from unsuccessful bank transfers, but could not get into the bank halls because of crowds.
We are trying to withdraw. Some people are trying to deposit the old cash, while some people are trying to rectify their problem due to internet issues. Sometimes some people do not receive alerts, while some people debited without receiving cash. So everybody's here struggling for their own problem. I personally, I came here very early in the morning to receive number 18 before 6 o'clock. Until now, I have not entered the bank.
I came here to withdraw some money. Since morning, I'm still here standing, not being able to even go inside. Whoever is responsible, they should find a way of allowing customers to withdraw their money, and as much as they want. When you go in now, they ask you to take. Today they say we should take only 3,000 maximum. This I said, what can 3,000 do for us? For me in particular.
Some describe efforts to access cash as frustrating and wonder why the CBN and the federal government have not come clean on the verdict of the Apex Court.
Once a customer here, I operate with this bank access. I was here since in the morning, around 6 o'clock, and this is how the queue has been here. And nothing is happening. People are not going in, they are not coming out. They came out, they told us they are going to pay 3,000 Naira today. But up to now, we are not getting the headway. Up to now, we are just here under the sun. So this suffering is too much for us. I believe the government should intervene. We are calling for the government to intervene because this thing is getting too much. We are suffering here. The suffering is too much for us.
The Supreme Court had in a judgment ordered the Central Bank of Nigeria to recirculate the old 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira notes to coexist with the new ones until the end of December 2023, when the old notes will cease to become legal tender. This order from the Apex Court has not eased the pains of ordinary Nigerians who depend on cash for their daily needs.
All right, now time for us to take a short break, and then when we return, Daybreak continues. Join us again. Now, as part of efforts to support Africa's goal of strengthening...
Now, looking at the activity chart, as you can see right here, a total volume of 130.
A Boko Haram crisis that at that time was restricted to Yobe.
How secure are they? You can see security men with blood.
This is the road leading up to the...
Already, if you look at English squad, you are looking at EPL, you are looking at their names. You are not looking at...
Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Where you find that
not necessarily tribal or regional.
All right, welcome back. This is Daybreak on Trust TV. Time for us to take a look at the dailies on Daybreak, and we have papers lined up for you. Beginning with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. The lead story here says, old Naira notes legal tender again. That's according to the Central Bank of Nigeria. It has the riders that says, you have no reason not to comply with Supreme Court judgment, says Buhari. Another rider, banks struggle to meet customers' needs. Pensioners decry Naira scarcity, say we are in pain. It's good news. Traders, POS operators. You'll find all the details of that story on page 19. Now, above the lead story, we have fire destroys 100 shops, stores in Kano Singa Market. And that's on page 6. National Assembly leadership have not endorsed anyone, says President-elect on page 10. We have nothing to hide, INEC chair tells Obi's lawyers on page 10. And now below the lead story, Tinubu's election rejection of religious hatred, sectarian politics. That's according to the presidency on page 27. Nigerians to pay 1,000 Naira fee for NIN integration verification, also on page 27. ISDB, LLF donate 100 million Naira storage facility to milk marketers in Kano. Now, the pictorial there shows you traders peak remaining of their wares after fire incident at popular Singa market in Kano yesterday. Below that pictorial, you'd find also violence. 7 states to watch ahead of governorship polls. Why we are afraid, residents. How to avert crisis, experts, CEOs. Now, to get more details about that story, you'll find that on page 4 on Daily Trust newspaper. These are the main stories on the paper today. We're also not forgetting that we still have 11 schoolgirls of FGC burning Yauri, 637 days after captivity. 1 student of Bethel Baptist High School, Kujama, 613 days after captivity. It seems no one is saying anything about this ones, but we urge for their release. Well, these are the main stories on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
All right, now let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. It has a lead story still on the Naira issue. Emefiele finally bows to pressure, says old Naira notes legal tender. The first rider, CBN directs banks to accept, disburse old 1,000 Naira, 500 Naira, 200 Naira and redesigned banknotes. And the second rider, disobeying court order undermines the rule of law, constitution, democracy. This is coming from the NBA president. And the third rider, AGF CBN governor don't need Buhari's directive to obey Supreme Court, according to the presidency. Beneath that, we have a pictorial of a meeting that held yesterday between the leadership of the APC and the members-elect. And under that, we have Tinubu has no preferred candidates for National Assembly leadership, Shatima. And just by the masthead, we have, I wasn't part of search for kidney donor, Ekwerimado's wife. And above the masthead, federal government probes theft in $1.1 billion oil well. We also have Nigerians to pay 1,000 Naira NIN fee for passports. Federal government shuts Lagos airport runway, diverts international flights. These are the major stories on the Punch newspaper for today.
All right, now on the Guardian newspaper, the lead story there talks about the Naira redesign policy. It says Buhari absolves self as CBN finally obeys Supreme Court order. CBN, that's the riders now, CBN has no reason not to obey Supreme Court on Naira redesign policy. CBN releases cash to banks as rationing intensifies. Obey Supreme Court judgment, NBA urges federal government and CBN. Middle Belt Forum, Kogi urge action on Supreme Court ruling. Now, above the lead story, Africa's energy crisis raises fresh health environmental concerns. 10th National Assembly leadership have no preferred candidate, says Tinubu. CBN debunks report of Emefiele plotting against Tinubu. Borno, Yobe risk acute food shortage. World Bank alerts. You have Rhodes Viver remains LP candidate. Party's legal team clarifies. Election materials. We have nothing to hide. INEC chair tells LP legal team. These are the main stories on The Guardian this morning.
Over now to the Nation newspaper. It also has a lead story that has to do with the Naira. CBN okays 1,000 Naira, 500 Naira old notes after Buhari's rebuke. The first rider, this is from the president. I never asked Emefiele Malami to flout Supreme Court judgment. And there's a quote here. The CBN has no reason not to comply with court orders on the excuse of waiting for directives from the president. And then beneath that, we have February 25th poll, Nigerians best ever, says president. And then just beneath that, from the NBA, election okayed by 92% of Nigerians. We also have APC to decide zoning of National Assembly offices after elections. And just above the masthead, we have ADP, NNPP, ZLP, 6 others endorse Sanwo-Olu. Then we also have Lagos Airport runway shut for repairs. Appeal Court reserves judgment in Adeleke suit. Beneath that, high energy cost affecting manufacturing, says man. These are the stories on the Nation newspaper for today.
All right, now on the leadership newspaper, the lead story is somewhat similar to all that we've seen in other papers, as it talks about as scarcity of Naira bites harder, PMB disowns Emefiele, Malami over defiance of Supreme Court. You have the writer says he is not responsible for plight of Nigerians. Old Naira notes remain legal tender, CBN governor. Labour gives FG 7 days to end Naira and feels scarcity. Now, other stories above the lead story. I have no anointed candidate for Senate President. That's according to this, the Tinubu talking about the principal officers of the National Assembly. Now, Lagos runways repair. Airlines may incur additional cost, flight delays. You also have Yobe Auditor General jailed 5 years for fraud. We have 10 days left to file petitions against tribunal, says Labour Party. So these are the main stories. Also, we have other stories beside the pictorial there. 2023 presidential poll better than past elections, says President C. Alleged anti-Tinubu plot. We are nationalistic, apolitical, says Army. Appeal court reserves judgment in Oshun Guba case. So these are the main stories on the leadership newspaper this morning.
Now let's take a look at the This Day newspaper. The This Day newspaper has a lead story that is similar to all the others. So I'll just take the two that are not prominent on the other newspapers. There's a story here just beneath the masthead that says, from Falana, Nigeria's political class don't want democracy to survive. This is on page 12 of the newspaper. And above the masthead, we have Obi replies church leaders, elder statesman says Tinubu not God's will in presidential poll. These are the major stories, aside the ones that other newspapers have on the This Day for today.
All right, so time for us to take a look at perspectives to this. More insight on some of these stories. We have Dr. Theophilus Abba, the director of the Daily Trust Foundation, with us in the studio. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. Well, the cash policy, the cash redesign policy is everywhere on the papers this morning, rightfully so, given the recent developments as far as that is concerned. We've seen that a Supreme Court judgment that was issued, beg your pardon, almost more than 10 days ago, it's now beginning to take effect in the sense that we have the CBN release a statement, we have the presidency also release a statement in a similar vein. So, what do you make of all this now, at this point?
Okay, I think it's a welcome development that the CBN has instructed banks to accept whatever you call the old 200, 500, and 1,000 naira notes and legal tenders. But you see, it talks a whole lot about the independence of the CBN. Now, when the fourth deadline for the use of the new naira note was given, you know, that was the deadline to stop acceptance of the old naira notes. You know, everybody was saying, oh, it was too short, the time was not enough. We remember that the CBN governor went to Daura, he met with the president, and the president said, okay, extend. Then he extended. Then the Supreme Court also said, look, 10 governors have, sued the CBN, the federal government on this matter, and they want you to remain, the status quo should remain. That means that whatever you call the old naira note should be in use until it was determined. The CBN did not act on it. The CBN waited for the president to give a national broadcast where the president said, okay, only the 200 naira note to be used until sometime April 25th. So it follows then that we expected, the president, to instruct the CBN, on what to do about the Supreme Court judgment. We say that these naira notes are still legal tenders. If you look at the sequence, you know, it's very clear that Emefiele had always referenced the president. I remember when the issue of the new Naira notes were coming up, there was, disagreement, including the finance minister, who said, look, this will affect the economy. And I remember the CBN governor holding a press conference. And the only statement I heard from him, because it was a clip that I saw on TV, was that I have the backing of President Muhammadu Buhari, or the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, to do this policy. You understand? So, for the president to now come and say, oh, Emefiele did not need express instructions from him before obeying.
Was that he didn't, part of the statement was that the president did not ask anyone not to obey Supreme Court.
Yes, but if you look at the precedents, you know, even obeying court instructions previously, Emefiele had to wait for the president to extend the date, even when it was clear to Emefiele that there was not enough new Naira notes, you know, to go round, and that people were appealing for the old Naira note to be used. He had to go to Daura to tell the president, what do I do? The president asked, okay, extend it, you know, by some weeks. You understand? So if he had always gone to the president, you know, to take instructions, it follows that we expected the president to instruct him, say, look, obey.
But even though he always went to the president to get all of these instructions, based on the CBN Act, was that normal? Is that what should have been done?
But that is the issue. You know, the CBN is not demonstrating the kind of independence, you know, that we expected. Let me give you an example. Just at the beginning of, I think at the weekend or last week, the Silicon Valley Bank, you know, ran into crisis. And the Secretary of the Treasury came out plainly to say, look, we are not going to bail out this bank. But if you have a deposit in this bank, you are entitled to about $250,000, you know. But to expect the Treasury, that is the equivalent of the CBN in the United States, to say we are going to bail out this bank, we are not going to do it. It wasn't the president, it wasn't Biden.
But as far as monetary policy is concerned, such as the cash redesign, you know, is concerned, some people have made the argument that yes, the CBN governor cannot act all by himself. It has to be in consonance with the president as far as taking decision on cash redesign is concerned.
Yes, it's true that the CBN is independent, but that does not mean that it will act in a manner as not to involve the presidency. But even if it does so, it must demonstrate that, look, we took the decision, we know why we took the decision.
Well, I do remember the broadcast, the early morning broadcast by the president. He said, I authorized. That was the language that he used, which meant that even though the CBN appears to be independent, the president gives
gives instructions to the CBN. You know, so you see, we expect that the CBN will do whatever is appropriate, you know, to ensure that the economy, to ensure that the financial sector does not suffer.
So now this statement by the presidency does it then hold water to say that the president didn't ask anyone not to obey court order? The presidential broadcast after the Supreme Court order didn't mention anything about the Supreme Court, yet it said that only the old 200 Naira notes will be recirculated. It didn't talk about the 500 Naira notes, it didn't talk about the 1,000 Naira. So going by that, you know, does it now hold water to say the president didn't ask Emefiele or Attorney General not to obey court order?
Of course, yeah, it doesn't hold water. I think it's a face-saving statement, because, Nigerians have come hard on the presidency over this matter. Because even before, you know, the president traveled to Qatar to attend a conference. You know, before then, I think it was shortly before then that the Supreme Court made the pronouncement, and everybody was surprised. Why would you be silent even when the Supreme Court has made this statement? You didn't say anything. You just kept quiet. You came back. You went to Daura. You know, we didn't hear anything. People were suffering. A journalist even died trekking to work. You know, but I'm thinking that the CBN can repair what has been damaged by bringing out whatever it has confiscated from Nigerians. The 500 naira note, the 1,000 naira note that CBN has, collected from us, want the CBN to give this money to banks so that they can dispense.
But I'd like to know though, yesterday morning, the early hours of the day, the former governor of the CBN, who is now governor of Anambra State, said that he spoke with the current governor of the CBN and that banks was going to start issuing the old money. But the CBN itself did not issue a statement. Their statement only came after the presidential spokesman statement.
I think immediately after, Soludo made the statement on his Facebook.
Yes, on his verified handle. Yes. But what I'm trying to say is that the CBN did not issue an independent statement on this issue until the presidential spokesman said that the president didn't ask anyone not to obey. Now, the question a lot of people are asking is that, wasn't it possible for the CBN governor to have asserted himself, seeing that the CBN is independent?
He ought to. Because that is what the CBN's independence means. If you have noticed that, look, this thing is affecting the economy. This thing is affecting the system. A lot of things are grounded. Being the CBN governor, you are supposed to make moves. And then we expect that you know better than the president. If you make the move, you can, Mr. President, this is what we have to do because of ABCD. Then you go ahead and do it. But you cannot wait for Buhari, who is enjoying himself somewhere, to say, okay, do this or don't do that. And when Buhari said, we did not instruct, the president said we did not instruct them not to obey Supreme Court judgment. Of course, it doesn't, I don't think that is the right thing to do. Buhari cannot now say, okay, don't obey Supreme Court judge. You shouldn't be saying that. But then if we discover that over this period of time when this crisis began, you kept giving them instruction, then it follows that we suggest that you did not give them that instruction to obey the Supreme Court. But I'm thinking that the CBN should make this cash available. A lot of things have happened. A lot of businesses have gone under. All the agencies related to the finance sector, they keep complaining that, look, this thing is causing problem. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria complain. The small-scale businesses, they also have been complaining. Now you can't even buy anything except you have cash. People don't have
ATM.
And they don't have bank accounts. They don't have bank accounts. And now if you want to transfer money to them and you are using a POS machine, you pay. You pay for to the POS machine who will take the money from your ATM card, and then you pay for them to transfer the money to the other person's account. And then if you need cash, then you have to buy your own money. So it's not a system. It's a very ridiculous system. And there's no way anybody will turn a blind eye to the fact that Nigerians are suffering. Nigerians are suffering, businesses are suffering.
Can we really even quantify the suffering or the cost of this decision on Nigerians and the economy generally? We've had a lot of stories about how people sometimes, you are going to make withdrawals and someone is saying, well, you're going to pay 4,000 naira to get 10,000. So that's like taking almost 50% of whatever it is you want to, withdraw, and the rest of it. So, can we really quantify this?
Well, I think I don't know if any agency of government or.
I saw a report yesterday that said that Nigeria lost 2 trillion, but then that's the one that maybe they were able to capture. Maybe they have not even captured the ones that happen in rural areas and a couple of other places. They will be able to capture those ones, or instead they approximate. The fact is that it's possible, if they contact the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, they contact even banks. For instance, if banks used to earn an average of maybe 20 million in a day from transactions, and now they earn only 5 million, or if businesses used to, make average sales of, let's say, 5 million, and they now make 2 million. They can come together and say, this is the amount of money that may have been lost. But my fear is that, in the first quarter of 2023, 2 things will happen. Tax collections will go down because businesses are not operating at full capacity. So the FIRS may not be able to meet its target. That is number one. Then we'll likely see a measure of, what do I call it?
a reduction in production, you know, I'm going to see, I mean, the economy would contrive, you know, a little bit because of this situation.
So when you look at it on a holistic basis now, when you look at the merits of this policy when it was announced to Nigerians, and then you now put it side by side, the lamentations and the sufferings that have trailed the implementation, how would you rate the policy generally?
Well, I don't think the policy achieved much. You know, we are told that because of the policy, kidnapping has reduced. You know, that needs to be verified, because now that criminals can access POS machine, you know, if you have your ATM card, or if you have your whatsoever, they can say, okay, you must. But they claim that has reduced. They claim that there was no money available for politicians to use, you know, in buying votes. Even that can be debated. You understand? But generally, this suffering that Nigerians have been passing through all this while is not really worth it, because the politicians that you said shouldn't have access to cash, they have access to cash. Many of these politicians don't even go to the ATM machine to withdraw money. Many of them don't enter into the banking hall. They just call their bankers and say, look, we need this amount, and they get the amount. I think that was even the confusion when the new Naira notes, were issued. They said, look, we issued 400 billion. Now it has disappeared. How did it disappear? Of course, we know. Because the people who work in the bank, they are answerable to important influential Nigerians. You know, if I have 10 billion Naira in the bank, for instance, and I call the bank manager, out of this 10 billion Naira, send 2 million.
All right.
You do something.
Are you optimistic that we are going to see the availability of this cash country, regardless of all the statements?
That actually depends on the CBN. If the CBN has not destroyed the Naira note they confiscated, then then there's hope. Because usually when you say, the notes are no longer legal tender, the next thing we expect is that they will take it to some place and burnt or destroyed. If CBN has not destroyed those Naira notes, then they have to return them to the banks, so that banks can begin to dispense. That is number one. Secondly, because people don't have confidence, much confidence in the system. Anybody who has the new Naira notes now may not return it to the bank. If you have it now, you just keep it in your house, you use it for transaction and try and get more. And that affects the circulation of the currency, because people have lost. Say if I take this money to the bank, I deposit it in the bank now, I'm not going to get it back. So it's an issue. So you see people keeping the money in their homes, or using it. Give 500 Naira to your children, 1,000 to buy this, and you just keep the money, because you know if you take this money to the bank, it will not come. It's an issue that would come up, and then you see, we tend to forget that even before the redesign policy was implemented, people had issues even getting cash from ATM machines. At times you go to an ATM machine, the one I patronize regularly, at times you go there, none of the machines will be dispensing cash. Then you find a long queue, you know, because you cannot enjoy the long queue, begin to look for POS machines so that you can buy your money. Now that is to tell us that, you know, we may face a institution that will be similar to what we used to experience before the CBN mopped up this currency. Because if the ATM machines are not well stocked, you know, if we don't bring out enough cash to feed the machines, then I don't think this will be as good as we expected.
Other people are saying that why don't we have other denominations? We are the whole policy affects only the 200, 500, and 1,000 Naira notes. We have 100 Naira and 50 Naira. Why can't we have those ones, you know, enough in circulation? Perhaps it could help to cushion the effect.
Well, it's true. If we had the 100 Naira note, 200 Naira note, 50 Naira notes, because in many societies, even you don't see the higher denominations in circulation. You see cents. You see cents, you see dollars, not $1, $2, €1, €2, €5. You see them in circulation. But the problem we have in Nigeria is that the inflation is so high that these lower denominations, you know, they don't really
And you talked about Nigerians being used to the cashless policy, but this issue, this problem that happened in the past 2 months brought to the fore the problem with the cashless policy, that our banks are not even prepared. They don't have the capacity to handle it.
They don't have the capacity, the bandwidth that they are using, the infrastructure, you know, to effectively manage a cashless economy. They definitely don't have, you know, because you want to send. Okay, I give you an example. I sent 15,000 naira to my son. He said that I didn't get the money. I said, I didn't get it. Yes, okay. Then I sent another 10,000 using another bank. Okay, I've got the 10,000. So he traveled from school and came back to Abuja. Then he received an alert of 15,000 naira. Then he called me and said, Daddy, he sent money to me. I said, but when you were at school, I sent 15,000. He said, did not see. That is the money. That took almost 24 hours for that money to enter into his account. And that had been debited. So, you see, the infrastructure is not there.
And in some instances, you don't get the money back.
You don't get it back.
This is a situation where it's to your son. There are instances where it's to some other persons who you don't know. And, you know, they may be credited later, or they may not be credited. You know, all sorts of things happened. And
so the infrastructure is not there. And then, you see, apart from infrastructure, even the literacy level. You see, if you go to rural areas, you know, you see how they are ripped off. They are ripped off real time in rural areas. Because if you need cash, you know, if you have your ATM machine, give it to them. They say, well, mommy, you want how much? 2,000 naira. Okay, so we are collecting 400 naira for your 2,000 naira. The woman says, okay, just give me. There's nothing I can do. You understand? You say, okay, let them use USSD code. How many of them are literate enough to use USSD code? You know, you say, okay, the internet penetration in the rural areas is very, very weak. Like if I enter my village, I have to look for a network. I'll go to under one palm tree, it's not there. I'll go to under the mango tree, it's not there. Then I'll start praying. Hello, let this thing come. For me to call Abuja and say I've arrived. So you can't have that kind of infrastructure is not reliable as if you are doing a cashless system. So, if we are going to be cashless does not mean that you don't use cash at all. Because I've been to cashless societies and I use cash. You know, even in New York, I use cash to buy.
Maybe not in large quantity, but
not the large, but I use cash to take tea. You know, I went to a cafe and I want to take tea. I had to pay with cash, even though there is an option of using a POS machine. So that does not mean that you remove all the cash from circulation and then ask people to start using their ATM.
All right.
It doesn't work.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Theophilus Abba, Director, Daily Trust Foundation, for joining us on Daybreak and sharing your insights with us on these stories.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we've come to the end of this segment. We'll take a short breather, and then when we come back, the Daybreak will continue. That will be at the top of the hour. Join us again.
documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, welcome back. It's Daybreak on Trust TV, reaching you from the nation's capital here in Abuja. We've gone an hour into the show already, so if you're just joining, well, you're somewhat late, but not late. Better late than never. We will be taking a look at the headlines once again, just for those who are joining us for the first time on the show this morning. Now, Kano fire. Over 100 shops razed as fire guts Singa commodities market.
Buhari never told Malami Emefiele to disobey Supreme Court order, says presidency.
Inspection. We have nothing to hide, INEC chairman tells Peter Obi's lawyers.
Now let's take a look at the details. Fire outbreak has rocked popular commodities Singa Market in Kano, which is located along Ibrahim Taiwo Road leading to Bella Road. The fire, according to eyewitnesses, started at midnight, but it couldn't be controlled until after 8 a.m. in the morning. Firefighters alongside marketers brought the situation under control and prevented it from spreading to other parts of the market. Singa is located along Ibrahim Taiwo Road in Kano and is the largest market where foodstuffs are sold in the state. This is the third fire outbreak within 2 months in the major markets of the state. Some of the victims whose shops were razed narrate their ordeal.
I received a call around 1:30 a.m. that our stores are on fire. By the time we arrived here, everything is gone. And we learned that the fire started from one woman that has a cold room. She's selling pure water. But I must tell you that I lost almost 13,000 cartons of seasoning. I'm not even feeling fine, but I was on surgery. So we received a call that our stores are on fire, and we rush here. I must tell you that I lost everything here. We just pray to God that God should replace it for us, but we have lost everything.
All right, now we sympathize with those who are affected by this. Now, the presidency has clarified that President Muhammadu Buhari did not direct Abubakar Malamida, Attorney General of the Federation, and Godwin Emefiele, the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, not to obey the Supreme Court order on the Naira redesign policy. In a statement on Monday evening, the presidency said that the CBN has no reason not to comply with court orders on the excuse of waiting for directives from the president. The highest court of the land had on March 3rd ordered that old 200, 500 and 1,000 naira notes remain valid till December 31, 2023. This was after 16 states of the Federation instituted a suit to challenge the legality or otherwise of the introduction of the policy.
The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, has assured the Labour Party's legal team of the Commission's readiness to provide all documents that the party requested to prosecute its case at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. Yakubu gave the assurance when he received the 60 lawyers legal team of the Labour Party's presidential candidate, Mr. Peter Gregory Obi, led by Dr. Levi Uzoku on Monday in Abuja. He also told the guests that the commission will meet with its resident electoral commissioners to work on modalities for the inspection of materials in the state. According to him, there were two categories of documents that were in possession of the headquarters of INEC, and that these documents will be made available to them. The INEC boss also said that the other documents is accreditation data from the back end, and that this will also be made available to them.
All right. Now let's take a look at some packages. The leadership of the All Progressives Congress has met with senators and members of the House of Representatives elected on the party platform to begin consultations and negotiations ahead of the selection of principal officers of the 10th Assembly. Despite the fact that the meetings like this are often arranged to zone offices in the emerging National Assembly, the leadership of the party will have Nigerians believe that the issues was not discussed. A glaring absentee at the meeting was President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who was represented by the Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima. Kende Amodu reports on that.
History is a great teacher. The rancorous emergence of the leadership of the 8th National Assembly is etched starkly in the minds of members of the All Progressive Congress. And so the party is starting early to set parameters ahead of the inauguration of the 10th National Assembly in June. APC lawmakers-elect arrive at the banquet hall of the presidential villa for a meeting. It is the first interface of the elected APC lawmakers with the party leadership since their victory on the ballot and after receiving their certificates of return.
It is also my hope and prayer that the 10th Senate and indeed the 10th National Assembly as a whole will jealously guard and protect the constitutional provision of separation of powers.
This is the first time in the history of our democracy that we're going to be having representation of the floor through this high number of political parties. But the good thing about it is it will foster better and greater negotiation.
As the APC begins to fine-tune the process of electing principal officers that will steer the affairs of the parliament, all things are being kept under wraps, and the party is downplaying the politics of zoning, which will determine who gets what in the emerging National Assembly.
If APC decides to zone just to give a balance and to give every segment of the country a sense of belonging, it's good. Some other party might decide not to and say winner takes all. For us, the most important thing is having Nigeria as a single entity.
We're not there yet. We have another election coming up this weekend, and we need to make sure that everybody goes back home. Roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty.
It's a family affair. This is not the right time to talk about zoning. All we need now is to consolidate on our victory.
Members of the National Assembly should produce their leadership based on who they think is the best, and also considering the issues at stake. Putting in place or ahead justice, fairness, equity.
We don't want to be preemptive. I know first and foremost is to welcome ourselves and congratulate ourselves on the resounding victory recorded on February 25. And going forward will be what are the issues regarding the leadership of the National Assembly.
While it is highly unlikely that zoning was not discussed, the official line being told is that the topmost priority for now is winning the second leg of the general elections. From State House Abuja, Kehinde Amodu, Trust TV News.
All right, now the Court of Appeal in Abuja has reserved judgment in an appeal filed by Senator Ademola Adeleke of the People's Democratic Party challenging the judgment of an election petition tribunal which nullified his victory in the Osun governorship election. A three-member panel led by Justice Mohammed Shuaibu, after taking arguments from all parties in the suit, said that the judgment will be delivered at a later date. Senator Adeleke had won the said election held on 16 July 2022, but the result was nullified on grounds of overvoting. Take a look.
The courtroom at the Court of Appeal Abuja Division is filled with lawyers and supporters of Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke and his predecessor Daybreak who are here to witness proceedings in the appeal filed by Adeleke challenging the judgments of Election Petition Tribunal in Osun State, which nullified his election as governor of the state. At the resumed hearing, counsel to Adeleke tells the court that a member of the panel, who is also a chief magistrate, did not air her opinion during the judgment delivery, but only appended her signature. Counsel to Oyetola, however, argues that signing of the judgment and not making any comment afterwards does not make the judgment invalid. In his defense, however, Onyechi Ikpeazu held that results stored in the back-end server are inconsistent and not reliable, as they can be affected by internet connectivity and battery life of the beavers used to upload the results. On the cross-appeal filed by Oyetola challenging the documents of Adeleke, the court held that it has been addressed in a previous judgment as such was an anomaly.
In this respect, on the issue of the alleged forgery of a testimonial, which saw Osun State appearing on a testimonial for a person who had been educated before the creation of Osun State, the Court of Appeal held in that case that it was a simple error, that he ought to have gone back to rectify the anomaly, but not having done that, that it wasn't an issue of forgery.
That everything has gone well for both sides. All the appeals, including the cross appeals, have been heard, and we're all in court when the court adjourned the matter to a date to be communicated to all of us. Simply, for judgment.
INEC, on its part, insists that there was no overvoting during the Osun election.
Just as with the presidential election, you will agree that all the results have not also been transmitted. So if you get a result, a CTC today, and tomorrow another person applies, he may get a different data because the data will go is going in bits. So you cannot, because of Section 62 of the Electoral Act that authorizes INEC to update the data from time to time.
The court also reserved judgment in the PDP and INEC appeals. INEC had declared Adeleke winner of the Osun governorship election, but in a split decision of 2-1, the Election Petition Tribunal invalidated the election and declared Oyetola as winner. Martia Umar, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right, from the Federal Capital Territory, we'll go to Benue State, where the Naira crisis has taken a new dimension, with customers now sleeping on queues to make withdrawals from their banks. Our reporter, Jimmy Azande, completes the report.
In the early hours of Monday, some customers were notified by their banks that there is no cash in their vaults for withdrawal. In some of the banks, there was chaos at the gate once the bankers announced that they could only pay 3,000 Naira only per customer. While some were okay with the bank's decision, it became an issue to get into the banking hall.
The experience here is not a pleasant one. I've been here since to 6 a.m. Actually, the workers tried their best. We were giving numbers so that people will go in queues according to the number. But some young men came and they refused to follow the protocol, and so they get the place chunked up. Nobody's going in, nobody's coming out.
Other customers said they had complaints from unsuccessful bank transfers, but could not get into the bank halls because of crowds.
We are trying to withdraw. Some people are trying to deposit the old cash, while some people are trying to rectify their problem due to internet issues. Sometimes some people do not receive alerts, while some people debited without receiving cash. So everybody's here struggling for their own problem. I personally, I came here very early in the morning to receive number 18 before 6 o'clock. Until now, I have not entered the bank.
I came here to withdraw some money. Since morning, I'm still here standing, not being able to even go inside. Whoever is responsible, they should find a way of allowing customers to withdraw their money, and as much as they want. When you go in now, they ask you to take. Today they say we should take only 3,000 maximum. It's as I don't want. What can 3,000 do for us? For me in particular.
Some describe efforts to access cash as frustrating and wonder why the CBN and the federal government have not come clean on the verdict of the Apex Court.
Once a customer here, I operate with this bank access. I was here since the morning, around 6 o'clock, and this is how the queue has been here. And nothing is happening. People are not going in, they are not coming out. They came out, they told us they are going to pay 3,000 Naira today. But up to now, we have not gotten the headway. Up to now, we are just still under the sun. So this suffering is too much for us. I believe the government should intervene. We are calling for the government to intervene because this thing is getting too much. We are suffering here. The suffering is too much for us.
The Supreme Court had in a judgment ordered the Central Bank of Nigeria to recirculate the old 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira notes to coexist with the new ones until the end of December 2023, when the old notes will cease to become legal tender. This order from the Apex Court has not eased the pains of ordinary Nigerians who depend on cash for their daily needs.
All right. Well, thank you, Jimmy Azande, for that report. Apparently, Nigerians are going through a lot as a result of the cash crunch. We hope that the new decisions or new statements by the presidency and also the CBN will make Nigerians to at least begin to accept the old notes. Now, we'll take a short breather, and then when we return, we'll take a look at our discussions on the program in the build-up to the governorship elections coming in a matter of a few days, in less than a week or so. So, join us again.
It's good to see you.
All right, thank you for staying. It's Daybreak, in case you are just joining us. Thank you. Now, the next discussion on the program, as 28 new governors are set to emerge this weekend, about a third of the states in contention have emerged as battlegrounds. While most of the battleground states are in the southern part of the country, the emerging political realities in the north have also moved some states considered safe for the respective ruling parties before now to toss up. We'll be talking about this in the studio, and we have the former, that's the Chief Press Secretary to the former Governor of Osun State, Ismail Omipidan, in the studio, and also he is joined by the spokesperson, Coalition of Northern Group, Mr. Samaila Musa, with us here in the studio. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
The pleasure is mine. Good morning.
You're welcome. Thank you. Well, perhaps I should give you an opportunity or a minute or two to talk about the raging issue of the current the cash crunch. You know, the recent statements, and you know how Nigerians have been forced to really cope with this issue.
Well, for me, it is unfortunate in the first instance that we had to go through this because if you look at the CBN Act, which empowers it to change the currency, it specifically stated that a reasonable period should be given for the new currency to take effect. And when you say reasonable, I am not sure anybody will say that 3 months is reasonable enough. And in any case, if you look at other climes where these things are taking place before now, in most of those countries, for a period of a year or more, they still spend the old and the new currency side by side. But you know, in Nigeria, we are such people that most times when things don't go our way and we are in a position of authority, we try to use it to punish others. That is the way, you know, I see it. But when the Supreme Court came to our rescue, I thought that was a window of opportunity for even the government to even hide under. But surprisingly, until probably yesterday, and you know, Nigerians, they believe so much in their leaders, whether we like it or not. So even though Supreme Court delivered judgment several weeks ago, Nigerians are still waiting to hear from either Mr. President or the CBN
But
governor.
Is that not an indication of the lack of confidence of members of the public on the judiciary? And how did we even get ourselves here?
No, I don't think it's a lack of confidence. You see, the major challenge we have is that as Nigerians, we are always reluctant testing provisions of our constitution or some of our laws in the law court. Ordinarily, I could arm myself with that Supreme Court pronouncement to insist that you must accept the old Naira note. But you see, if I have the time to challenge it in court, how many Nigerians have such time? You know, that is the major problem, and that is why they tend to wait on their leaders to talk to them. But I want to commend, you know, some of the governors, somebody like El-Rufai, who went ahead to insist that, look, let us obey Supreme Court judgment and try to inspire, you know, the people to continue to, you know, to spend the money even before yesterday. It is my hope and belief that with yesterday's statement from both the CBN and the presidency, this situation will ease for good.
All right, Mr. Samaila, my question is, since this policy, the implementation started, all we have heard is tales of woes, lamentation, and all of that. And today, nowadays, these same notes are back as legal tender. Was the suffering, was it necessary?
You see, first, I think
I feel very sad for Mr. President. I feel very sad that whether he has done well before now or not, you know, is debatable. But the last part of your days in office, how he allowed some people to hoodwink him into this mess is what I can't explain. Because from experience, I thought he should have known better. Or if he has maybe a coterie of advisors around him who will say, look, this last days, I mean, let's just leave without leaving some dents, you know. But unfortunately, he just made he made a mess of whatever he has been obeying court orders in the past, or he is not a man known for impunity. The whole thing is been trashed into the garbage now, because this suffering was completely unnecessary. You have made people have lost their lives even, you know, because it's only when things happen in big cities that we get to know about them. Several stories about our people who died for just no reason, because somebody is saying, I'm not going to accept this money. The other day we were interfacing with they have association of there's this, I've forgotten the acronym now. They take foodstuff and cattle from the north to the south. And a lot of them were stranded in the village markets because some people have enough money to buy up to like 10 trailers. You know, they move from one village market to the other. And the villagers are saying, look, I don't even have a bank account if you want to do a transfer. They say, oh, we have the old money. He said, no. They said, the government said they are not accepting the old money. You understand? So these guys became stranded. And this suffering was just unnecessary. People are sleeping in the banks for what reason? If at all our people in the central bank have forgotten where their brains are, at least they should copy from the United Kingdom. This happened just recently when Queen Elizabeth just died, you know, where the Prince Charles picture now had to be on the new pound. Nobody gave any deadline to say you must do this in 3 weeks or do that. Concurrently keep spending both. When this old notes goes into the bank, they don't come out.
Do you think that perhaps there's a gang up or some kind of conspiracy to frustrate the policy to make sure it doesn't work?
There's no any, if there's any conspiracy at all, the conspiracy is from the CBN governor. And I say that boldly. That because you see, the first thing that happened was that a certain CBN governor made a mess of the whole system when he dabbled into politics without resigning from his office. You understand? That has made a total mess of the whole thing. So when you come out and there are insinuations, oh, this party going to meet you that they're going to give you, you're going to retain your seat if you make sure this happens or not. Whether those stories are true or not, you want to believe there's an iota of truth in it, because we've seen a situation where, or like this paper is saying right now, how does it take you this long? Because when the Supreme Court passed that judgment, you should have, you know, like tried to make some speech to say, look, because there are situations that say, oh, the CBN is not going to obey the Supreme Court because the president is not happy with the judgment. Whether that is true or not, at least try to, you know, debunk those allegations and say, no. Why not? The CBN is not, you know, is not above the law. We, of course, the judgment has been passed. We're going to accept whatever, since it's that's the apex court in the land. So, but you know, the silence itself sends so much fear into the minds of people. And like the point you're saying that is because the people don't have confidence in the judiciary, that's absolutely not true. Because like he rightly pointed out, if I have the means of approaching the court because somebody's saying I'm not going to accept this note, we're about 200 million people. How many people will have that time, you understand, to start going through the court process for not accepting your money?
All right, well, let's not deviate from the main reason why we want to talk about the political issues, even though we know that this partly may have some links to the politicking and the rest of that. But we specifically want to focus on the coming governorship and state assemblies election. Let me start with you, Samaila. Part of the reason, maybe I should just link with the cash, whatever. part of the reasons that we've heard is that perhaps the cash redesign will curb the issue of vote buying in our elections. How did you see that play out in the presidential election, and what are we to expect in the governorship?
Well, if the reports I got from the field is anything to go by, I think those who are in the habit of giving people money to vote for them still had their way. It's just that you didn't see the cash, but money got to some of them. But you see, the major challenge is we need cash not only to give people to vote. There are other logistics. For instance, the agents, you need to pay them. INEC to transport, some of those materials, they need this cash. So, for me, I don't think it's a salient reason for the Naira redesign, because whether you like it or not, money plays a major role in politics anywhere around the world. It's just that the modus operandi may differ. When Trump was going for a second time, we saw how he tried to induce voters. So, I mean, this thing happens anywhere. I'm not saying it is right, but to now want to punish over 200 million Nigerians because you think in your own imagination that it will curb vote buying, for me, I don't think it's tenable. But let me say with all sense of modesty that where I voted during the presidential election, I didn't see any cash, any money exchange hands. And that was what gave me the opportunity to say on that day, during one of my interactions with some journalists, that for me, I think anybody who came out to vote on the 25th of February are indeed the real voters, because they did not wait to collect money before going to the polling booth, just as they did not wait to collect money before they decided who they were voting for. So I believe that in this Saturday's election, I want to say with all sense of modesty that we will still have a little bit of sanity as far as vote buying is concerned. That is with cash. But that is not to say that those who are in the habit of inducing voters will not devise other means to carry out their activity.
All right, Somaila, he said the people that came out are the real voters. But then we had a problem, low voter turnout. Now, what do you envisage will happen on Saturday, especially when you look at the story in the Daily Trust? It says violence, 7 states to watch ahead of the governorship polls. And when you read the story, you hear some states, because of inciting comments, because of activities of thugs, the people of the state are already expressing concern, fear of maybe they may not be able to come out because of all of this. What do you envisage on Saturday?
Okay, I think to a large extent, the turnout might seriously be higher than what we saw in the presidential. The reason is because, you see, every politics is local. There are a lot of people who will tell you, look, I don't know the man contesting for president in PDP, I don't know the one in APC, I don't have any business with them. The Labour Party, I don't have any business. But this one is from my local government, for example. But this one is from my zone, for instance. So you're going to have those kind of sentiment that is going to play out, and people will come out en masse to one vote. But you see, the issue of thuggery and all of that, those ones are normal. I mean, we've been living with that for a very long time. But the new dimension.
Are they normal?
No. What I mean, in our climate, you have to be realistic.
But we're
not saying it's right.
We're
not saying it's right.
That's why it's a bit.
We're not saying it's right, but it's normal with our climate. Was there any election in Nigeria where there was no thuggery?
Maybe they use the word normal. So
no. What I mean with our own situation is a normal thing. It's not new to us. It's not new to us. Nobody, look, the same politician. I've seen where a politician who imported thugs into the states was saying that in his life he has never seen a gun. It was his opponent that was bringing, and it was sounding so real. But you see, no matter what they tell you, they know. All the Nigerian politicians are all the same. They do it. because they tell you, let this group stay at the back in case they want to attack. As a matter of fact, since I was a child, I've been hearing a slogan from, I don't want to mention his name.
All politicians do it. There's no innocent one among them.
There's none of them. They will come on air and tell you this or that, but they all do it. I know if a politician says, when I was a child, he was saying that whenever you go for campaign and you hear this, because you're saying it Hausa, and you hear there's any kind of anything you don't seem to understand. What we don't want to happen is that we don't want you to be the victim that will go to the hospital to go and visit. Let it be them. We prefer to pay whatever fine we need to pay because we injured them. You understand? So it's normal in our climb, but we're not saying it's right. It's not new. The only dimension that this whole thing is taking, and why you need to watch out for some state, especially the most volatile of them, is the fact that we're seeing issue of religion coming into play in this, because immediately after the presidential, the results inform some people to say, oh really? So this religion actually all went this way. So why not our people also go this way? So if that is not properly managed, because in a situation where this other religion is feeling we're going to have the upper hand, and that doesn't seem to be working the way they expected or based on their permutations, there might be some inciting statement. Already there are on social media that is saying no.
Not only on social media,
you understand?
with known faces. We've heard some of the utterances with known faces. As a matter of fact, I read a story, I think it is in Sokoto or so, where the PDP is actually calling on is petitioning the IGP, to call some other persons to order for making insightful statements, for saying things like attacking other people and the rest of them. So that's going to take me to the next question that I'm going to ask: the role of security personnel in all of this. It looks like some people just go scot-free despite all the utterances.
Well, I agree with you because in Osun, where I come from, it took us a lot of troubles to get some of the non-political thugs arrested. Like I said yesterday in one of the radio programs, I stated it emphatically that, look, if APC governed Osun, at least in the last 4 years until November, and we did not witness the spate of violence we are witnessing in just 3 months in Osun, clearly you should know who is fomenting trouble. And I went further to state clearly that the chieftains of the PDP, they were on tape, doing their campaigns. In fact, they were the ones who were doing the video themselves. And so they posted the video themselves on the social media. And so you could hear the kind of inciting statements, utterances they were making. In fact, one of them, who is now a House of Reps elect, he said when he was assisting others during the election, that he was carrying guns. And now that it is his own turn for the election, that he will deploy grenade and bomb. Wow. He stated it clearly. And I was amazed that even after saying so, with evidences, he still walked freely. And he was able to carry out his threats on the day of election to the extent that in the area where he came from, the other party had no opportunity to come out to vote. Now, when all those were happening, the government didn't say anything. But when they now started picking some of the known political talks one after the other, it's just recently that they are now crying, saying that the IGP should come to their rescue. And I said, look, but when they were killing the other party, we didn't even hear condemnation for once from the government. So most times, I must confess to you that security operatives are compromised. That is the truth.
But in the presidential election, the security operatives were hailed. In fact, they said that they performed so well, they comported themselves appropriately. However, I do understand that the governorship election is a different ballgame altogether, where it's now individual states. Do you think that the performance of the security operatives will be different?
Well, it will be different. The reason being that, like my colleague here said, every politics is local. And don't forget that these security operatives, they are also human beings. Some of them, as we speak, may already be positioning themselves to work either as ADC or CSO to the person they believe will come in. If, for instance, they are in a state where the governor is seeking a re-election, and if in their own estimation they didn't enjoy the governor during his first time, they will also want to see how the governor can be dislodged. And so, in so doing, they compromise their position. Those are the kind of security operatives you will see. They will, if you call them that talks are destroying polling unit, they will say, okay, we are coming. And that is what you will hear, we are coming. And those who want to carry out the harm will do the harm and go scot-free.
Samaila, we've seen the emergence of vigilante groups, some kind of security arrangement in different states in the past few years as a result of the security issue and the rest of them. And we've seen the clamor for them to be armed. Some, have some form of ammunition, with them. And how do you see all these groups playing a role in this election, and what should we be watching out for?
Well, the major problem we have in this country is actually not the planning. A lot of times we have the plan, is the execution actually. The problem is going to be that how do you make sure that these groups are not going to be compromised, like you mentioned earlier? How? Because you see, politicians deploy every tactics that is available in this world. The aim is just one: we must win that election. There's no saying, oh, perhaps we want to win. No, we must win that election. So one of your strategy is to identify what group and what group do we need to bring in. You understand? So in the process of that, there is no way you want to play that there's not going to be some compromise. Some people are already saying, oh, you want to even visit them. You want to talk to their leaders and say, what are your challenges? What are your problems? We're going to empower you more. But in the interim, take this few millions, before we come to power. So that's the major way our problem is. And that takes us back to corruption, because we're only looking at corruption from the government's angle. But, individually, that thing has actually penetrated into our veins. So, but if there are means where you're going to say, oh, okay, let's take this vigilante from so-so states and move them to so-so state, for example, maybe that's, I'm just giving an example, maybe that might work. But in as much as there are going to be identified groups in those states, there is no way politicians won't reach out to them. And whether do you think that we, as a government or as a country, we are approaching these issues of violence in our politics, in our political process with the needed attention, that it deserves right now? Because, okay, look at the issue of voter turnout. We've seen a consistent drop in the voter turnout, and largely due to the issue of security and violence in our process. Since 1999, we've seen consistent drop. In the last presidential and National Assembly elections, we saw about a 27-28% voter turnout, which is much lower than what we had in the previous election. So it has continued to drop. Are we approaching this issue the way it should be addressed? Okay, I think whether it was here or in another studio somewhere, I mentioned it when the drive for PVCs was going on and all of that. And I said, look, there's a chunk of the populace who, the major reason why they get in the PVC is just as a means of identification. They don't have a driver license, they don't have international passport. The next one that is easier for them to get is the PVC. So, there's people are actually losing confidence in the government, in governance, and be like, look, whatever it is, we're still going to find ourselves, because it's like a vicious cycle. We've been moving this around and saying, oh, this one is better than this one, and then he comes in and is worse than what he meant. So, you know, people, that's actually eroded the confidence of people in whatever it is that is going on. But apart from that, there's so much fear based on the, you know, the vituperations and all of that, to say, look, how safe are you when you go out to vote? As a matter of fact, I saw where parents were making calls to their children, because when I was with a friend who is old, his elderly father was calling him to say, please, just stay indoor the day of election, because we don't know what's going to happen. So there are going to be several of those kind of calls, because everybody's afraid for their lives. There are instances where in those places, there are terrains where even this particular presidential election, you know, there were threats. You understand? So all those issues come together to say, look, if you like yourself and you want to stay alive, stay indoor. So we're going to see that keep going on. But you see, the outcome of the presidential election actually is something that is going to overheat the polity the more. The reason is because some people have already won the election in their hearts.
All right.
And so to hear otherwise is not something they actually manage,
Yeah.
you know.
All right. So apart from the inciting comments and all of that, there's something else the politicians are doing. We have seen them becoming very nice to citizens. We have seen them paying teachers, giving teachers 500 million in some states. We've seen them lifting ban on motorcycle operations. We've seen some releasing prisoners, you know. And last week when there was an accident in Lagos, within minutes, we saw the 3 top governorship candidates that were there with their medical teams, and you know, and I saw some people commenting on social media saying maybe every week should be election after all, you know. So I'm wondering, do you think that this last minute performance, as it were, is enough to sway the mind of voters? Because some of them are seeking re-election and they have had 4 years to do some of the things that they're doing now.
Yeah, okay, so majorly that's been the norm in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, we saw a little deviation from what used to happen. In the past, it will be that a governor is going to a meat seller to go and buy corn and eat there with people and shake hands with Okada people and go to hairdressing salon and all of that. But I think they've advanced now, you know, trying to render some community service away from the buying akara and all of that. But you see, election is always assumed to be Judgment Day. And so when people are actually looking at their grave, they tend to be more holy and all of that, because they see there's a possibility that you know, they're going to be buried in this tsunami.
All right. Samaila, maybe you want to chip in here.
Well,
just a minute.
Yeah, I agree with him absolutely. But to answer your question, I don't think it should be, because if for 4 years you didn't deem it fit to give me water, and in the 11th minute you are now giving me the water, what is the guarantee that after renewing your tenancy I will continue, you know, to get the water? So if the water you gave me had been consistent, I can say, okay, well, if even when you didn't need anything, you gave me this. So now, even if you are giving me this, I won't conclude that it's because you know you needed something. So in all, I think the decision should lie with the voters. They should be conscious enough to know what they want.
Okay, so let's just deviate just a bit from the governorship elections and talk about the members-elect now. Yesterday we saw a meeting of the APC elected parliamentarians meet, and there are speculations that perhaps it has to do with the choice of principal officers at the National Assembly, and the president-elect said, well, he has no favorite, you know, and all that. So perhaps you want to, you know, give us some insight on that.
Well, I read that story, and if I were the president-elect, I wouldn't say so, because as the president-elect looking forward to be inaugurated, you should be interested in who leads the National Assembly, because whatever the National Assembly does, whether you like it or not, will have effect on whatever promises you have made to the people of the country. Maybe it is an attempt to ward off pressure and lobbying that are already coming his way. But for me, I see the meeting as a good one. If anything, I hope APC will learn from the mistakes of 2015, because incidentally, I was still, reporting from the National Assembly, when all those lobbying started. And in one of the articles I wrote, I did warn that APC should know that he does not have overwhelming majority, especially in the National Assembly, both the Senate and House of Reps. Therefore, it must not rely only on its member-elect or senator-elect to elect presiding officers. You need the buy-in of the opposition parties, because especially when you cannot have consensus as to who should run for the office in your party. The moment you have more than one person showing interest from your party, it means that you must find a way of resolving it before it gets out. So for me, I welcome the meeting, and I hope that the meeting will bear fruit. But let me advise very strongly that the way the country is being configured, for the Senate presidency, for me, I will advocate very strongly that the Southeast should be considered, because that is the only way to give them a sense of belonging.
All right, Sumaila, he said that he talked about the president-elect saying that he's not showing interest at this point. But then there was a writer to that story saying that they should go and work for the governorship elections first. So don't you think that the reason maybe the president-elect is not saying anything yet is because there is another election to be won, and then he needed people to go and work hard?
Whatever is the reason, I think President Buhari also gave that posture that year that Bukola Saraki emerges and say, oh, no, it doesn't cost that. And then 9 minutes, we started seeing the hand of Esau or the hand of Paul or whatever it is they say, playing out, and that created crisis. You understand? And that's why throughout the Senate presidency of Bukola Saraki, it was one crisis or the other, and it's the same party. It was the same party. The president and the Senate president are from the same party, but yet it was looking as if it was the opposition that was there. So it's better for the party to know, because we saw this also play out when the presidential election, the primaries was coming around, and the president was acting like aloof, like I don't care whatever happens, and then 9 minutes he's showing interest in knowing. And it's actually appalling for me that a sitting president does not care about who succeed him, because we're not talking about your personal property, we're talking about a government, we're talking about a country that you're trying to move. So as a matter of fact, part of leadership quality should be, like breeding another leader that will take over from you, that has the same ideology if you mean well for the country. So you should look for like minds if you really mean well for the country, and not the issue of let me chop here, you chop there kind of politics. But really, we're looking for like-minded people who wants to move this country forward. You should be concerned about who mans what, so that you can actually achieve that goal.
All right. Well, because of time, let's shift away again to what's happening right now at the appeal court. And I'm talking about the Osun State governorship legal tussle right now. Yesterday we saw that there was the hearing at the Supreme Court. At the appeal court rather. And we want to just get your take, Sumaila, on this, on all that has transpired so far. Arguments over voting, and the other party is saying no over voting here.
Well, Osun's election case is an interesting one, and I'm sure most Nigerians are showing very keen interest in it. I listened to the INEC counsel yesterday trying to draw a similarity between what happened during the presidential election about 2 weeks ago to what happened in Osun. Even though I'm not a lawyer, but as an intellectual, I do know that there are no similarities
at the Court of Appeal Abuja Division.
Because during the presidential election, INEC came out to tell us that they could not transmit immediately for certain reasons. Whereas during the Osun governorship, as the results was being declared, it was being transmitted. So the issue of network, except you are telling me that because the Beavers report upon which the APC built its case in Osun was based on a certified true copy from INEC generated from their back-end server. Now, if you are not arguing that there was no network, you are not, except you are telling me that for 10 days after the return was made, there was no network to transmit data. Because what INEC told us was that the first Beavers report that was issued to the APC was incoherent, was not synchronized, according to them. Now, they now issued another Beavers report, and the APC got its own Beavers report 10 days after the election was declared as being concluded and winner emerged. They made the return. Now, it was based on that Beavers report that APC filed this petition at the election tribunal. Now, after filing this petition, apparently seeing some of the areas the APC was challenging, INEC now prepared another Beavers report, which they now called synchronized Beavers report. They are now arguing that that synchronized Beavers report supersedes.
What they are saying is that that's the complete one.
That is what they are saying. But as at the time, you know what the court asked them was that as at the time you issued the first one, did you tell APC that the one you are giving them is incomplete? They said no. Did you make any attempt to withdraw it, having realized it's incomplete? They said no. And you know, law is not about sentiment, it's not about emotion. It's about what it is. Facts and logic. Now, there is now another third report, which was generated from the physical inspection of the Beavers machine.
At the Court of Appeal, Abuja Division.
Since there are controversy between the two Beavers reports issued by INEC, the court should rely on their own report, which was generated from the physical inspection of the Beavers machine, where they claim that only 6 polling units had overvoting. But the point is, it wasn't PDP that conducted the election. And so if you did not conduct the election, how can you produce results? So those are the issues before the appeal court. And, election petition is time-bound. From our calculation, which the presiding judge even mentioned yesterday, the deadline, the date for the expiration of the matter at the appeal court is 26th.
Okay.
So they are expected to deliver judgment between now and 26th.
All right, let me just let Samaila chip in on this. Your take. It seems like Beavers is creating all sorts of challenges for us.
Well, you see, INEC had about 4 years to prepare for another election after one election has been conducted, except for cases of where you have some states where elections are not being conducted at the same time with, like, the general election, I'm talking about the governorship and all of that. But you see, if you had this much time, you brought in the idea of the Beavers and all of that, and then either the company where those things are being produced didn't tell you what are the likely challenges. I think that's actually that undermines your preparations, because you should have envisaged some things that are bound to happen. So what do we do? What is the backup if we encounter this technical issue, or if we encounter a network issue? What do we do? So all this, because we're talking about the general election, where the president is going to be produced and all of that, and you don't want to look like you don't even know what you're doing in the long run. Yeah. So I feel, even if at this time, because they have now the opportunity to right whatever wrong happened in the presidential election, if this same thing continue, and we witnessed, we experienced this during the governorship that is going to be a few days from now, then it shows that INEC was never prepared at all.
All right, thank you so much. This is where we would have to end the discussion. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Ismail Omipidang is the Chief Press Secretary to former Governor of Osun State, and also Samaila Musa. He is the spokesperson for the Coalition of Northern Groups, joining us on Daybreak for perspectives on some of the matters arising ahead of the elections and also after the elections. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's our show for today. In case you've missed, you can always catch us across all social media platforms and also on our YouTube live stream. I am Ayuba Ilya. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Join us same time, same station tomorrow. My name is Stella Iyaji, and do have a very pleasant day.